Food, glorious food. I'm not going to sing it. Throughout the world today, humanity has managed to cultivate all different kinds of food from the various plants and animals found on our planet, from the humble livestock and staple crops that keeps the world fed, to cultural differences like eating insects in Asia. I've done it. I won't repeat it. If it exists, we'll try to cook it and eat it. But what happens when the food fights back? When food doesn't just turn sickly but deadly, which one is going to put you 6 feet under? And which one causes the most destruction? These are far-flung fatal foods from all across the globe, but some, in all likelihood, will be in your kitchen right now. Lovely. Bon appetit. Number 25, starfruit, the kidney killer. You might think that this bittersweet 5-sided native fruit of the tropics looks like something you would pick up on a Mario Kart circuit, but whilst those particular stars might make you invincible for a short time, under the wrong circumstances, these ones can do literally the opposite. You see, starfruit actually contains a neurotoxin known as caramboxin, and its juice contains oxalic acid, an organic acid found in many species of plants. Now, for you and me, this would otherwise be a completely fine thing to consume in moderation, but for those with kidney problems, it is a much bigger issue that can become life-threatening. A person with weak kidneys will struggle to filter out the neurotoxin and the oxalic acid. Caramboxin can build up in the blood if it's not filtered and can actually jump the blood-brain barrier, which is something you definitely don't want your toxins to do. Because you see, a neurotoxin getting inside your brain and your cervical spine, apparently that's the thing, is a bad thing for your health. If that does happen, well, it can cause permanent brain damage. Some of the symptoms of starfruit poisoning seem innocent enough, such as hiccups that don't seem to go away no matter how hard you try. But other common symptoms include vomiting, confusion, nausea, agitation, weakness, abdominal pain, and even seizures. In more severe cases, people can experience limb numbness, back pain, trouble breathing, trouble speaking, high blood pressure, and falling into a coma. And unfortunately, many people who experience these symptoms, well, they turn out to be fatal. For those with chronic kidney disease, a single starfruit can result in coma within 3 hours and death in 3 days. What's scariest about starfruit poisoning is that for an individual with poor kidney function, just how little it can take of either the juice or the fruit to cause a person serious harm. It reportedly only takes 3 starfruits, which are relatively small, to have deadly effects. Meanwhile, a single glass of starfruit juice has enough levels of oxalic acid to cause someone to go into full-blown kidney failure through kidney toxicity. However, it is actually dangerous enough that it can pose something of a threat to people with totally healthy kidneys if you eat enough of it on an empty stomach. So maybe avoid offering your uncle on dialysis some starfruit this Christmas, unless you really, really don't like him. Just joking, don't murder people, okay? But at least starfruits are relatively uncommon in many parts of the world, unlike our next entry, which you might have in your fridge right now. Just before we continue today, a quick word from our fantastic sponsor, Sideprojects. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, you don't exactly bounce back, do you? I mean, maybe you do if you're in your 20s. But, I did in my 20s, and then I got into my 30s, and I was like, oh, God. Why do I have headaches now? What's happening? Well, Sideprojects pre-alcohol probiotic. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? The world's first genetically engineered probiotic is here. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rather rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme that breaks down this byproduct, so it's not there. It was broken down. It's good, Then you feel less terrible. Make it your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I've tried this. They sent it to me. I met up with a mate of mine. And I was like, try this. Let's go on the lash. I drank responsibly. Very responsibly. And I felt fine. Because of all the responsible drinking. For me, I like it. You can enjoy a couple of drinks with your friends. Probably shouldn't do that. You can't just, honestly, I will have a couple of drinks these days and I'll just be like, ugh. So this is fantastic. The older I get, the more I need this. Give it a try. They got 100% money back guarantees. If you're not satisfied for any reason, they'll give you your money back. So you can't really lose. Use the link in the description. You'll get 15% off your first order with free shipping. And that's Sideprojects. Just give it a try. And now back to today's episode. Cherry pits. Stone dead. Ah, yes, the humble cherry that your mother may have turned into a tasty pie as a child, while they're actually extremely deadly, even in small amounts. But Simon, I hear you wail. I once ate a whole punnet of cherries, and I was absolutely fine, you lying bastard. Ah, well, look, my dear future commenter, you spat out the pits, didn't you? like a sensible human being. Cherries have a hardened pit that surrounds their seeds, also referred to as a kernel, and these kernels contain the chemical known as amygdalin. Now, amygdalin is totally harmless on its own, and cherry kernels themselves are not going to poison you, but if you chew or crush the pits, the plant's enzymes mix with the amygdalin to create hydrogen cyanide. That's the one you've heard of. It's the one that they use in movies to kill people. But you must be thinking the amount of cyanide inside them must be tiny. You'd have to eat a whole field of cherry pits to successfully manage to pop your clogs. Right, Simon? Well, no, not exactly. Most people don't chew the pits because they're really hard and they hurt your teeth, so we spit them out, like we're supposed to. But depending on the type of cherry, like the morel cherry, for example, chewing and swallowing as few as 5 or 10 kernels could lead to cyanide toxicity. This mostly poses a danger to children because it takes fewer cherry pits to cause serious illness, and kids might not know they're not supposed to chew the kernels if nobody has told them that. Although children wouldn't do this. They don't. My kids don't even like eating watermelon seeds. They're like, "Oh, Dad, I don't like it." If they ate cherry pits, I'd have serious concerns about their abilities. In fact, that goes for almost all stone fruits to a certain degree, like apricots, mangoes, plums, and more. Always do your research before giving something to a child. Just swallowing the pits is okay, although they are a choking hazard and could cause a colon obstruction. Just apparently cherries. It can affect adults in a unique way too. Some people churn up cherries, pits and all, when turning cherries into their own homemade liquor with disastrous results. In Italy in 1996, a 56-year-old Italian woman ate around 300 grams of choked cherries that had been sitting in alcohol as the base for a popular homemade spirit. She developed severe headache, nausea, vomiting, and difficulty breathing. By the time she was treated in the ER, she was comatose and having changes in her heart rhythm. She suffered permanent damage as a result, but she kind of got off lucky. You see, cyanide is one of the deadliest natural poisons on the planet, causing seizures, loss of consciousness, organ failure, and, well, death in a lot of cases. So keep an eye on those pits, because one too many and this stone fruit could kill you stone dead. Again. But at least they don't have the word death in their name, right? Number 23, death cap mushrooms. I mean, for this one, they're literally called death cap mushrooms. They're not called give your tummy a bit of a boo-boo mushrooms for a reason. It goes without saying, but we're going to say it anyway. Unless you are extremely experienced and well-trained in identifying wild mushrooms, do not forage for wild mushrooms. And if you do, get them verified by an expert and test them to make sure they're safe before you eat them. This is a death cap mushroom, and this is a common edible field mushroom. You see how similar they look? So similar that you probably didn't realize we switched those two pictures around in editing and you didn't notice. You had absolutely no idea. I rest my case. I'm not taking any legal responsibility if you paused the video before I said this, alright? Poisonous mushrooms prey on the ignorant. They kill up to 100 people every year by current estimates, but thousands more get sick because they eat them thinking they're edible. Spoilers, they are. They're just edible once because then you die. And as you saw from that first picture, here it is again for real this time. You see, they're pretty unassuming, being responsible for up to 90% of all mushroom-related deaths. Mushrooms like the fly agaric are big and red and scream, "I am poisonous, don't eat me." Death caps don't do that. They're about the size of a doorknob on average, but some can grow a fair bit longer. Their caps can be green, white, or even a bronze color. They have white gills and a silky skirt-like membrane. What's worse is that it reportedly even tastes pretty good, but its effects aren't pretty good. Between 6 and 72 hours after ingesting, the mushroom's toxin enters the liver through the intestinal tract, where it binds and deactivates enzymes that make new proteins. And you need new proteins. With regular protein production now being halted, the liver begins to die, causing nausea and diarrhea, which is often followed by rapid organ failure, coma, and death. It's a horrible, pretty embarrassing, and disgusting way to go. The thing to recognize with death cap mushrooms is they have rapidly spread to every single continent on Earth bar Antarctica. Despite starting out solely in Europe, they have been able to develop a version of asexual reproduction in new environments to produce perfect copies of themselves. As someone from Europe, you're welcome, world! This is known as sporulation. Sporulation. Learning new words today. And allows death caps to thrive in almost all environments regardless of numbers when they arrive somewhere, just waiting for an unassuming person to pick them up, thinking that they are oh so safe to eat. There are hopes that a fluorescent dye called idocyanine green could be used as an antidote in the future. So far, this antidote has worked in human cells, mini models of the liver, and in mice, but it hasn't been tested in humans. So until then, don't be the recipient of the Darwin Award for eating a food with the word death in its name, okay? But it still might be better than our next one, San Nakji, the Korean food that fights back. What could convince someone to eat an octopus, I've never known. And the more you hear about San Nakji, the infamous South Korean dish, the less you'll want to eat octopus. And that's a good thing, considering how dangerous it can be if eaten wrong. It's salty, it's sticky, it's chewy, we know we're really selling it here, where a small species of octopus known as nakji is served just after being killed, while raw, usually drizzled with sesame oil. This is gross. Is this where it gets stuck to your throat? What's usually served is the tentacles of the octopus, and due to the way that octopus physiology works, and because it's killed just prior to serving, it proves to be a pretty unique dining experience. An octopus has a highly complex nervous system. They're incredibly intelligent animals, capable of solving puzzles, manipulating objects, and learning from observing others. And part of that intelligence comes from the fact that 2/3 of their neurons are located within their tentacles. What this does in the case of San Nakji is it allows those neurons to continue to fire even after death or dismemberment, causing the tentacles to wheel around on your plate as if they were alive. And yes, people look at that and say, I want to eat that, for some reason. But these octopi are capable of causing a person immense harm from beyond the grave and even death. It's kind of like the octopus's revenge. Because octopi are... It says octopus in the script, but isn't the plural of octopus octopi? I don't know. It feels right, doesn't it? Because octopi are famous for one thing with their tentacles. That's suckers. These sticky little protrusions on their tentacles still have neurons firing through them even after death, and so they're still capable of gripping onto things. People report the tentacles of San Nakji holding onto their chopsticks, which is frankly horrifying. But this proves to be an extremely dangerous choking hazard for some reason, especially if they don't cut the tentacles up into small enough pieces. It could result in the octopus tentacle gripping onto the inside of someone's throat, causing obstruction, and well, good luck getting that out. Around 6 people die every year in South Korea this way, and I don't want to say they deserve it, but guys, come on! More recently, in 2023, a news story gained international attention when an 82-year-old South Korean man died of a heart attack after choking on San Nakji that he was eating in the city of Gwangju in 2023. When the first responders arrived at the scene, the man was already in cardiac arrest. They started CPR, but were unable to resuscitate him, and he was later declared dead at a local hospital. In some places, even though it's frowned upon, small enough octopuses... I gotta know. Yo, ChatGPT, what's up? What's the plural of octopus?
Hey, so the plural of octopus is actually a bit of a fun one. You can say octopuses, which is...
Shut up and tell me the answer.
No worries. Short and sweet. It's octopuses.
No shot, really? I apologize, Ollie, who wrote this script. I will stop correcting you from now on. I have a tiny brain. In some places, even though it's frowned upon, small enough octopuses are served while still alive, a practice so cruel that you probably deserve to choke to death on one if you try it. Seriously, why would you even want to do that? But our next entry causes similar asphyxiation-related death by the hundreds every year, and we can't get enough of it. Peanuts. Fatal reaction. Ah yes, the simple peanut snack food of champions, ingredient in all kinds of delicious meals. It's almost lunchtime, I'm getting hungry. I kind of want the, what's the Chinese? Is it Kung Pao with the peanuts? Yes, please. And totally, unapologetically lethal to a select few. Globally, humanity consumes around 48 million metric tons of peanuts every single year, whether that be in bars, in things like various Asian dishes, or on planes as a snack, which to this day I simply cannot understand. Wait, why not, Ollie? Peanuts are delicious. I'm disappointed now that we have pretzels on a plane because of the bloody weakling allergy people. How about if you're allergic to peanuts, you just don't fly. Stay home. I'm joking, my wife's allergic to peanuts. It's a problem. Peanuts are the most common food allergy found in Europe and the United States today, with it affecting up to 2% of the population. For reference, that constitutes around 20 million people in Europe and the US alone, with reactions ranging from a slight rash and a throat tickle all the way up to almost instantaneous death. Those on the more extreme end of the spectrum have to carry around an EpiPen, or sometimes multiple EpiPens, in order to stop them from getting accidentally murdered by something that monkeys eat for fun. Or what's more is that the prevalence of the allergy is growing, having increased by 3.5 times over the past 2 decades, and it's still rising. Peanut allergies occur when the body mistakenly perceives the proteins within peanuts as an external threat. This causes a process in your body called anaphylaxis, which is like a severe overreaction to your body's immune system to that threat. Peanut allergy allergies are the most common cause of food allergy-related anaphylaxis on Earth today. 95% of people who suffer with a peanut allergy, whilst the rest of us are chowing down on a salty snack, can feel the effects within at least 20 minutes. But in the most severe cases, symptoms can start within mere seconds of exposure. If you experience anaphylaxis, some of the common symptoms might be swelling of the face, lips, tongue, and throat, which constricts your airway and makes it very hard to breathe. Other symptoms include getting a rash, your blood pressure bottoming out, a rapid pulse, dizziness, and loss of consciousness. Without acting extremely quickly, a person can rapidly get permanent brain damage or even die. Even thousandths of a peanut can cause a major reaction in someone who is sensitive enough. Even a tiny trace can prove lethal. And yet so many airlines insist on giving them out within a sealed, small, enclosed space, usually hours away from any medical facilities. It is weird, isn't it? This is also one of the many reasons restaurants ask you if you've got any food allergies. Too many people have died because trace amounts of peanuts were found in food that shouldn't have any. Even something being cooked in peanut oil could easily be enough. In total, 150 to 200 people die every year in the United States from allergies, and it's estimated that peanuts are responsible for 50 to 62% of those deaths. It is no joke. Do not flick a peanut shell at someone who is allergic for a laugh. Do not wave a Snickers bar in their face. You could literally kill them. People literally go to jail for this. Aki, Jamaican vomiting sickness. Jamaica, the land of done, sea, and good vibes only. Yet this tropical Caribbean paradise has a dark secret, and that's their national fruit, known as the Aki, which can be incredibly damaging to your health if you don't consume it right. You see, the fruit, it's not actually native to Jamaica. The Bligia sapida tree, or Aki tree, as it is known, is actually native to West Africa, and it was transported to the New World in 1778 during the Atlantic slave trade. And ever since, it has become the national fruit, as well as an essential part of the common Jamaican diet. As fruits go, it's pretty weird with its red and yellow skin, pale yellow flesh, and black seeds. It's got a savory flavor, often compared to almonds or chickpeas, and it has a texture once cooked that's similar to scrambled eggs. It's served with saltfish at breakfast time alongside onions, peppers, chilies, and other produce as the national dish of the country, and has a cultural significance to Jamaicans who have reclaimed it from the time of slavery. But crucially for your health, it's got to be ripe enough. The yellow aril is the edible portion of the fruit, and it starts its life containing high levels of hyperglycin, which is toxic to humans. But as the fruit ripens, going from a closed green color with hard to visualize seeds to its trademark yellow-red color with open appearances and easily visible seeds, the toxins decrease enough for it to be rendered safe for human consumption. Ingesting unripe Aki isn't just bad for you, it's potentially deadly, inducing a condition known as Jamaican vomiting sickness. Symptoms are delayed a few hours after eating it, but include profuse vomiting, altered mental status, and hypoglycemia. Symptoms will also rapidly deteriorate into seizures, hypothermia, coma, and death within 12 to 48 hours. Cooking unripe Aki doesn't reduce its toxicity, and the seeds remain toxic throughout its cycle of growth and should not be eaten at all. Its unripe state is so toxic that you cannot even reuse water that was used to cook unripe Aki. And what's worse is that there is currently no known antidote for hyperglycin A, the main toxic compound in Aki. Medical treatment is primarily supportive with IV fluids. It poses the biggest risk to the malnourished and to children. The minimum toxic dose is not currently known, and the mortality and morbidity of eating unripe Aki are thought to be underreported. But tell you what, play it safe, don't eat that. However, the threat Aki poses is relatively minor if you know what to look for, while our next food can catch even the most vigilant person unaware. Number 19, grapefruit, the fruit that will make you overdose. Yes, even something like grapefruit, whilst usually sweet and tart, can be considered completely lethal in the wrong circumstances. You see, grapefruits contain high concentrations of chemical compounds known as furanocoumarins, and these interfere with enzymes in your digestive system that helps you to break down medication so you can absorb them at the normal level into your body. Particularly, grapefruit messes with the enzyme cytochrome P43A4. Ah yes, I know it well. And in fact, it's one that is absolutely vital to the metabolization of certain drugs, and not the fun kind, the life-saving kind. When grapefruit interferes with this enzyme, medicines stop breaking down correctly. This can lead to someone receiving a dangerously low dose of their desired medicine, which can be very dangerous. What's even more dangerous, though, is that more commonly it causes extremely high levels of the drug to enter the bloodstream and causes an overdose. Just a single glass of grapefruit juice alters the function of your drug metabolizing enzymes for over 20 24 hours, and repeated consumption can reduce it permanently. This is why you have to read those pamphlets that you get with medications. It's not them all just telling you that side effects include diarrhea and constipation at the same time, because many common medications adversely react with grapefruit in this way. In opioids, for example, it could be highly lethal, as we can see from the current crisis surrounding opioids in the United States and just how deadly overdoses from opioids are. In statins, which are drugs used to combat high cholesterol, the accumulation of the medicine in the body would lead to the breakdown of muscle tissue. This is why I can't have grapefruit juice. I take my statins for my cholesterol. God, I feel old. Which can quickly lead to kidney failure and death. For blood pressure medications, which are extremely common, it can result in low blood pressure that leads to swelling in the brain. These are just a few examples, and there are plenty more out there, such as medicines that contain estrogen, which plenty of women use for hormone replacement therapy. The results of this can be pretty dramatic across the board. Rapid heartbeat, bone marrow toxicity, which apparently is a thing, that, internal bleeding, and more. So talk to your doctor when you start a new medication, because you never know when a random fruit can go from delicious to deadly. Pangium edule, cyanide, banana leaves, and ash. Pangium edule is a species of tall tree that mainly grows deep in the jungles of Malaysia and Indonesia, and it's also present in Singapore. It bears huge rugby ball-shaped fruits, but it's not actually the fruit that people want to eat. It's the seeds, known as buah kaluak or kepayang, and they call it a fruit despite it not actually being the fruit from the tree. Nobody can seem to nail down exactly what it's called because of the various languages and regional dialects across these countries. The seeds themselves have a strange flavor profile, said to be earthy, chocolatey, and with a hint of mushroom and raisins. I don't know if that sounds good, guys. That sounds really weird. I'm not sure exactly how those flavors go together, but they are all reportedly present here, and they must work pretty well together as it is considered a local delicacy. However, the seeds are absolutely loaded with cyanide, even though they are the part that people prefer to eat. They require a long and meticulous process to be made safe for human consumption. To guarantee that it's safe to eat, the seeds need to be soaked for a few days before being boiled, wrapped in banana leaves, and buried in ash for around 40 days. This is the most elaborate seed production process I've ever heard. Who came up with this? During this time, the seeds turn from a creamy white color to a brown or black color, and they undertake a process of fermentation across those 6 weeks that helps to rid the fruit of any residual cyanide that wasn't released during the boiling stage. The cyanide can then be washed away, and the fermented kaluak can be ground into a black paste, which is used in a variety of dishes like gabus putsung, also known as Betawi snakehead fish soup. It's weird. And nasi kabuli, a dish traditionally served to ancient Pahang royalty. How they worked out that that's what you have to do to render them safe, I have no idea, but I'm glad they did. Failing to adhere to these steps could lead to acute cyanide poisoning and even death. And whilst there are no specific cases documented, the Malaysians in the state of Pahang have a term for someone who becomes ill as a result of kapayang fruit being improperly prepared. Such a person is referred to as a mabuk. The potential lethality is there for all to see, especially as chickens are known to eat uncured kapayang and gruesomely die within hours. So what, someone saw a chicken, they were like, you know what you should do? Boil it, then bury it in ash for 40 days and then eat that. How? How, humans? How? But I'd still rather eat those than our next food, blood clams, the shellfish that live in polluted rivers. Ah yes, it's 2025 and we do have goth clams now. These terrifying little critters are known as blood clams, and they really do look like that. Blood clams can be cultivated all over the world, but they're considered something of a delicacy in Southeast Asia and especially China. They're red like that because unlike most clams, their blood contains hemoglobin, like ours, which makes it look like a massacre when people eat them. They're traditionally eaten raw and have a comparable flavor to geoducks. Ah yes, the famous geoduck, I know it well. Another bizarre-looking but decidedly safer to consume clam. But that blood-red color should also come as something of a warning. You see, these guys are capable of transmitting some very nasty diseases to humans. Clams and shellfish of all kinds are filter feeders. They take their food from the water that is all around them. But the word filter there, it's a little bit misleading because that gives you the impression that they're safe to eat. They're cleaning all of that stuff. But they're not, and blood clams are an excellent example. You see, blood clams are mainly cultivated in places like China, and if you've ever seen the average waterway in China, it just looks like a floating landfill. And as a result, these shellfish, just like other shellfish, are often living in contaminated waters with not a lot of environmental oversight, and so they become the perfect vessels for accumulating large amounts of viruses, bacteria, and harmful toxins that are then delivered to people's plates. The Xinjiang River, which feeds the Anhai Bay, where 37.5 hectares of clams are cultivated, and the Zhejiang province, where 353 kilotons of blood clams are produced every year. Good lord. As a result, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, and hepatitis A are all known to have been transmitted to humans in large quantities because of the pollution, chemicals, and waste all existing in the water where they're farmed. Lovely. If this video is the first time you've ever seen a blood clam, it's because this issue is so widespread that importing them is banned across much of the globe owing to the health concerns they raise. There's no way of knowing just by looking at the pulp of a raw blood clam if it's contaminated, and if you eat it, you could develop a serious illness. And in especially bad cases when you could get Oregon trailed real quick. In 1988, blood clams from Jiangsu province, a high-risk hepatitis A region, infected 300,000 people and killed 31. Your chances of getting hepatitis A from a blood clam are on the conservative side around 16%. So eating blood clams is like playing Russian roulette with your gastrointestinal health. Want to take that chance? Don't think so. But if eating blood clam is like playing Russian roulette with a revolver, preparing our next dish wrong is like playing it with a fucking Glock. Fugu, the deadly pufferfish. This might be the deadliest food on the whole list. By the way, I just made a video all about this on my other channel, Into the Shadows, so if you want a whole, I think about half an hour episode about fugu, you could check it out. It's insane. Fugu, the species of pufferfish that specialized Japanese chefs have to train for years to be able to prepare and serve to people, is also rather deadly. And that's because these fish are, for the most part, stupidly poisonous. A lot of pufferfish contain the neurotoxin known as tetrodotoxin, or TTX for short. The toxin arises from the diets of pufferfish that eat things like poisonous sea snails, for example. They have a natural immunity to TTX, and so it's able to build up in their system unabated. That toxin is a great defensive mechanism for potential predators, but not for hungry customers. Fugu is considered a Japanese delicacy and has been eaten in these lands for hundreds, if not thousands of years. There are even records of samurai getting sick and dying from eating it, and despite a number of bans over the years, today it's legal to consume there. You even have chains of fugu restaurants in Japan that all serve the light, delicate flake sashimi. But one slip of the knife from your chef and you're going from eating fishes to sleeping with them. Different species of fugu have different parts of them that are toxic, and Japanese fugu chefs have to prepare extensively for a written and practical test where they have to prove that they can gut and clean a pufferfish without one drop of blood being present. The test is so hard that even for chefs who have practiced as apprentices for years, the pass rate is only 35%. Generally speaking, the skin, eggs, and liver are where the deadliest concentrations of TTX are. TTX, by the way, 1,000 times more deadly than cyanide, which we've already mentioned a few times in this video. Fugu is so residually poisonous that people who eat it often experience a tingling numbness in their mouth. But if there's a drop of TTX anywhere in your food, that numbness will spread to your whole body. It starts at your fingers and toes before it gradually moves inwards. As the neurotoxin starts to affect your spine and your brain, you're going to sweat, vomit, probably yourself, have trouble breathing, have a seizure, and stagger around like a drunk, among other symptoms. Eventually, the paralysis will reach your lungs as your entire body stops being able to move, at which point you suffocate inside your own body, fully conscious the whole time of what is happening to you. Death often comes within hours. TTX is odorless, tasteless, and colorless, so by the time you feel the symptoms, it's too late, and there's no antidote. In Japan, there are barely any deaths every year these days because it is so tightly controlled, but deaths are relatively common elsewhere in the world where there's a black market for pufferfish. Getting this wrong is a painful, lonely, and utterly horrible way to go. Number 15, Gyromecha, mushroom rocket fuel. We're back in the world of mushrooms for this one. Gyromecha, otherwise known as the false morel, is a spring mushroom that grows mainly in Europe and North America. This is yet another case of mistaken identity leading to death, much like the death cap that we mentioned earlier. People see the irregular lobes of the Gyromecha and assume that it's the highly coveted morel mushroom. To the uninitiated, it is easy to see how the two could potentially be confused, especially as not all mushrooms are perfect specimens when it comes to identifying them. True morels have fully hollow caps covered in pits and ridges that form a honeycomb structure. In contrast, the false morel has an irregular, convoluted cap with several hollow chambers inside. You don't want to mix these ones up because that mistake could be the last mistake that you ever make. You see, this mushroom is toxic, with a capital T. It contains the poison known as gyrometrin, which happens to be extremely unpleasant in what it does to your insides. Gyrometrin, when it enters the digestive system, is broken down with water into monomethylhydrazine, or MMH for short. MMH is a chemical better known for its use as a rocket propellant. So yes, you eat this mushroom and it will poison you with rocket fuel. And that, just in case you're unaware, not particularly good for you. But how bad for you is it? Well, if you eat it, you wouldn't like your chances. Early symptoms of gyromytrin poisoning include things like stomach pains, sweating, vomiting, diarrhea, and dizziness. But there are a whole host of gastrointestinal and neurological symptoms, as you would imagine, as you've just eaten rocket fuel by accident. Well, not technically, but it did make it inside your body, which is kind of intense. On the worst end, there's delirium, seizures, circulatory collapse, organ damage, coma, and death, which usually occurs 5 to 7 days after eating, most of which is spent in total agony. So that's nice. Believe it or not, though, some people really do eat these things. Gyromytrin is soluble in water, and after all, water is what turns it into rocket fuel. It is technically possible to remove most of the toxin following a very rigorous method, but we still wouldn't recommend it for a few reasons. Firstly, this process releases toxic vapors into the air, which doesn't really seem like a risk worth taking. Secondly, even well-cooked false morels have been known to cause poisoning, so cooking them safely isn't a guarantee. And thirdly, making a habit of eating them can cause a buildup of toxins in the body and ultimately death. So maybe just don't eat these ones. All right. Number 14, dragon's breath, the accidental record breaker. Do you like spicy food? I love spicy food, but I can never eat it when I eat at a restaurant because I sweat like a beast. If I'm eating spicy food, I'm going to have a towel next to the table. Like, oh, a little bit of mild spice. Like, what's that Key and Peele sketch where the guy's just sweating? Sorry, we're back to it. How about spicy chilies? Fewer people truly do, but many like to partake in the challenge of punishing themselves and pushing their bodies to the limit for some reason. And you might be wondering what some of the spiciest peppers in the entire world are. Now, of course, there's the infamous Carolina Reaper, which clocks in around 1.6 million Scovilles, the common measure of spiciness, based on the concentration of capsaicinoids, the chemical that causes that wonderful spicy burning sensation. But there's always been a question that needed to be answered. Could a pepper be so hot that it could kill you? Well, in 2017, we might have had the answer. Let's introduce Mike Smith, a Welshman from St Asaph, who not only created the unofficial world's hottest chili pepper at the time, but also did so completely by accident. This is dragon's breath. Mike, in his infinite wisdom, wasn't even trying to create a spicy pepper when he cultivated it. He was just trying to make a pretty-looking plant. And it was shortlisted for the Chelsea Flower Show's Plant of the Year in 2017, but it didn't win. Mike didn't realize how hot it was until he tried it, and he named it after the classic Welsh dragon. As a result, he said, quote, "I've only tried the tip of it on my tongue, and it burned and burned. I spat it out in about 10 seconds. The heat intensity just grows." Now, a regular jalapeno, I'm sweating thinking about how spicy this is. A regular jalapeno pepper registers at, I'm not even joking. I start thinking of chilies and I start sweating. I don't know what's wrong with me. A regular jalapeno pepper registers at about 8,000 Scovilles. A ghost pepper, that's 1 million. A Carolina Reaper, 1.6. That's the official record holder. Dragon's breath clocks in at 2.48. And it was all done by accident. US-grade military pepper spray is 2 million. That means eating one of these is worse than getting maced by the National Guard. It has to be kept under lock and key in a specially sealed container. That's how hot it is. But can it kill you? Well, actually, yes. In the wrong circumstances, it can. Due to the absolutely high concentration of capsaicin, it is theorized that it could overstimulate the immune system and trigger an intense inflammatory response, as well as causing severe burns, major gastrointestinal distress, and even anaphylactic shock. And according to experts, eating just over 0.5 kilogram of ghost peppers could be enough to literally kill you outright if you could put up with the sheer heat, that is. Peppers also have the ability to potentially kill indirectly. One documented case in India showed that after a man ate some ghost peppers and drank a lot of water, he threw up so much that he tore a hole in his esophagus and collapsed a lung. What the dude? So, something almost 2.5 times stronger might cause some serious damage. Now, dragon's breath was taken over as the unofficial hottest pepper in the world by Pepper X in 2023, which reaches an ungodly 2.68 million Scovilles. A magnificent achievement, but that was created by someone who was actually trying to break the record, not a Welshman in his greenhouse dicking around with pretty flowers. Of course, Pepper X also has the ability to kill you in the wrong circumstances, but just a forewarning if you try something this spicy. It sucks going in, it sucks worse going out. But at least you'll know what killed you, unlike our next food, which is a silent, insidious killer. Number 13, Suang Tangzi, fatal fermentation. Who doesn't love noodles? I like noodles, I don't love noodles. Little strands of goodness usually served in a tasty sauce or broth that are just as delicious as they are a pain in the neck to eat. Well, these noodles aren't just a pain in your neck, they're a pain in your everything. They're known as suangtangzi. It's a dish that is popular in China's Liaoning province, just to the east of Beijing on the Yellow Sea's coast. They're made from fermented corn, which gives them a distinct sour flavor. To make them, traditionally corn grits, which is basically just dried corn, are first washed and then soaked in water, where the starches in the corn are broken down with enzymes into simple sugars. This starts a natural fermentation process. The water is regularly changed to keep up this process until a sour aroma develops and it starts to lightly bubble, which indicates that the grits have softened enough to be removed, washed, and ground down with water and drained, which forms the suangtangzi dough, which is then cut into oodles of noodles. But it turns out this traditional method can prove deadly in the wrong circumstances. Take an incident from October of 2020, for example, in which 12 family members came together to celebrate a national holiday with a meal. Part of said meal included frozen leftovers of suangtangzi soup. As the soup started to defrost, the noodles accumulated an abnormally high concentration of boncrecic acid. Of the 12 family members who ate the soup, 9 of them died. So, what happens? Well, they were the victims of boncrecic acid poisoning, obviously. Boncrecic acid is produced by the bacteria Burkholderia gladioli, and it flourishes in the presence of warm temperatures and fungal organisms, such as in the process of food fermentation. And it further thrives in improperly stored starchy, moist foods, especially when spending a long time at room temperature or when thawed out slowly. In this case, it likely gave the bacteria time to multiply, which generated boncrecic acid within the soup, which the family then consumed, proving fatal. The acid attacks the mitochondria within cells and can quickly cause kidney injuries, liver failure, and a painful, truly gruesome death. Boncrecic acid is a particularly nasty one to get into food because, for starters, it can't be destroyed by cooking. It's also odorless, colorless, and tasteless, making it extremely hard to detect until something goes wrong. And on top of that, there is no minimum safe dose. Even in tiny amounts, it can prove hugely damaging to the body. There's also no antidote for being poisoned by the stuff, meaning that the only treatment you can get is supportive care, usually in an intensive care unit in hospital. The best way to prevent this happening to you is to swear off fermented food products like suangtangzi altogether. And look, that was a pretty niche one, but still undeniably deadly. Time for a food that no doubt every single one of you will have heard of, and it's a major killer every year, because it's number 12, hot dogs. Choking children. Hot dogs, the mystery meat cylinders that we all know and love. We don't care if it's made from the worst parts of an animal possible. If it tastes good, that's what matters. So, it's probably pretty distressing to learn that hot dogs can be seriously dangerous for your health in a number of different ways. Hot dogs have that beautiful reddish color. Well, that's actually the nitrate that turned it into a kind of molecule called nitrosamines when cooked at high temperatures, and various studies have linked these to a multitude of different kinds of cancers. Yes, I know it's controversial, but hot dogs can give you cancer. It's not going to stop me eating them, but they can. And of course, there are regular health risks associated with heart disease, an increase of 46% to be exact, as well as high blood pressure and weight gain that are associated with consuming a lot of ultra-processed meats. But everyone knows hot dogs aren't health foods. The real risk to a person's health is as they literally eat one, because it's a massive choking hazard, especially for children. Because of their shape, pediatricians have flagged hot dogs as one of the most dangerous foods in terms of choking hazards. Nisha Kapadia, a pediatrician, had the following to say on the matter when interviewed on the topic, quoting here, "Every food poses a choking risk in young children, but the hot dog has just the right size and consistency to perfectly block the airway. It is the perfect plug that doesn't allow any air to get through." And researchers agree. Johns Hopkins University revealed that hot dogs are the top cause of food-related choking deaths in children under the age of 3. When bitten into or chopped up, they form thick, round, coin-like pieces which are perfect for getting lodged in a child's throat and causing serious danger to health. No access to oxygen for even a short time can wreak havoc on the body and brain, ranging from falling unconscious to permanent brain damage and even death. Hot dogs are the cause of 17% of food-related choking incidents in children in the United States. The American Academy of Pediatricians reports that a child dies from choking approximately once every 5 days in the US. That's 73 children per year choking on hot dogs and losing their lives as a result. How do you avoid this? Well, hot dogs are unhealthy enough that you can justify not giving them to very young children for that reason alone, but nobody's perfect, and let's be honest, everybody loves hot dogs. So, if you're gonna give a child a hot dog or any other similarly shaped food, it should be cut into strips lengthways instead, which will hopefully stop the choking hazard in its tracks. And of course, supervise children when eating at all times. An iPad can't do the Heimlich maneuver. Number 11, cassava, the deadliest food in the world? So, believe it or not, raw cassava is actually one of, if not the deadliest food in the world in terms of food that can directly cause somebody's death through its own compounds found naturally within it, as opposed to food that indirectly kills somebody via choking. Improperly prepared cassava is responsible for around 200 deaths per year, and whilst that might not seem like a whole lot, that actually puts it top of the list using that direct example. So what is making people push up daisies more than any other food? Well, it's our old pal hydrogen cyanide again. Cassava contains a number of active ingredients that are harmful to human health, including both linamarin and lotaustralin. Both of these, when broken down, release toxic hydrogen cyanide gas. So, if cassava isn't properly prepared, it can lead to a lot of chronic health problems for people, and much like with the other examples of cyanide-producing foods on this list, it can kill. Now, we're not going to go over the symptoms of cyanide poisoning again because we've been through it already, but there is something about cassava that makes its potential for being deadly greater than our previous examples, and that's sheer numbers. You see, cassava is considered the 6th most important food crop in the entire world in terms of annual production, and it's the 3rd biggest source of calories across the tropics. It's grown mainly for its starchy, tuberous root, which provides a much-needed source of nutrition for over 800 million people on Earth today across 80 countries. It's a staple in places like sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, South America, and the Pacific, and for relatively poor places, it is vital for sustaining life. It's also a very hardy crop, able to tolerate extremely dry conditions, which is why it's so popular on the African continent. Climate change is set to make cassava even more relied on in the coming years, if the last 30 years are anything to go by, where the production of cassava has almost doubled globally. Over 2,000 species of plants contain cyanide in some form or contain compounds that can be broken down into cyanide. But cassava is the only staple food crop of all of them that is lethally toxic if not prepared correctly. And because it forms a large part of so many people's daily diets, requiring them to eat almost exclusively cassava, the risk of accidentally toxifying oneself is even higher for those individuals. People in parts of Africa eat 700 to 800 grams of the stuff every day. Across your entire life, you only need to get it wrong once to be killed. So not only is cassava technically the deadliest food in the world by sheer numbers, its deadliness potential is the highest on this list by a country mile. To control the level of elements capable of producing cyanide in cassava products, the World Health Organization has set the safe level of these products in cassava flour at 10 parts per million. But this is very difficult to make standard. Countries have their own laws and opinions on these things. For example, places like Indonesia have a maximum level of 40 parts per million, but many other countries simply don't have any limits at all because it would be impossible to police it effectively. So, for now, like a sword of Damocles, cassava giving everyone cyanide poisoning is simply a risk that we just have to accept. Number 10. Chocolate. Pet cemetery. Ah, chocolate, the tastiest, sweetest, most delicious treat in the world. Is it poisonous to us? No, it's fantastic. But it is to our four-legged friends. You see, to them, chocolate might as well be nuclear waste, and unfortunately, dogs have a strong nose and love to eat things that are bad for them. It's difficult for dogs to differentiate between what is safe to eat and what isn't, especially when us humans can artificially make certain foods taste and smell so good to them. As a result, chocolate ingestion is one of the most common toxicities in dogs. And that nuclear waste line was hyperbole, but chocolate really is dangerous to animals in a really serious way. Many people have a story about how their dog ate a whole bag of Hershey's Kisses and was totally fine, but these tend to be the exception, not the rule. Or the people with dead dogs are not mentioning the fact that they ate the Hershey's Kisses. You will know your own dog best, but here's why it's bad for their health in general terms. There are generally two toxic compounds to dogs that are found in chocolate: caffeine and theobromine. You may know this already, but what you might not know is that this is exactly the same for cats too. I did know this, but cats can't taste sweet, so they don't eat that shit. These two compounds stimulate the central nervous system and the hearts of canines and felines. They also act as diuretics, which can quickly lead to dehydration, making the prognosis even worse. The high sugar content in many kinds of chocolate can also cause stomach distress or even pancreatitis in severe enough cases, which is very painful for pets. But generally speaking, it's the cocoa powder that is the main culprit here. The darker and higher cocoa content the chocolate contains, the more theobromine and caffeine there is, which means it's more dangerous. For example, pure cocoa powder is considered the most dangerous dangerous of all, but unsweetened baking chocolate can also be lethal in high enough amounts, or at least enough to make your pet seriously sick. Milk chocolate is a little better, again, but still absolutely not advisable. If your dog or cat gets into a large amount of chocolate, their chances are pretty low. Generally speaking, symptoms can start occurring between 2 and 12 hours after ingestion, with symptoms persisting for between 12 and 36 hours on average. Chocolate consumption in pets can cause vomiting, diarrhea, increased thirst and urination, restlessness, fast breathing, increased heart rate, hyperexcitability, tremors, incoordination, seizures, fever, coma, and death in the most severe cases. Deep breath. So, for your pet's health and safety, keeping chocolate or products containing caffeine in a secure location out of reach is essential. And if your pet accidentally does eat some chocolate, go to a vet immediately. If you really want your pets to have chocolate that badly, they make stuff that is completely safe for our furry friends, so they can enjoy all of the taste and none of the risks. That's a win-win, but it does make you look at chocolate a bit differently, doesn't it? Number 9, bushmeat, AIDS, COVID, monkeypox. Alright, we've all heard of bushmeat. The name seems to conjure up images of exotic roadkill in poor countries across the world, but that's not really accurate. So, what is bushmeat? Bushmeat is a collective term referring to the meat derived from wild animals for human consumption. With a definition like that, it comes from a wide variety of animal species all over the planet, including monkeys, pangolins, snakes, porcupines, antelopes, elephants, and giraffes. This bug's eating a giraffe. But there's more. In Africa alone, it's thought that there are over 500 different species that are hunted for bushmeat. In the rural regions of West and Central Africa, bushmeat can make up 80 or even 90% of a person's animal protein intake on a day-to-day basis. Well, those guys are eating giraffe. Question answered. But if so many people are eating it, what makes it so dangerous? Well, 2 words: zoonotic diseases. Upwards of 75% of emerging infectious diseases are of zoonotic origin, meaning that the illness originates as a sickness in animals and then is passed on to humans, usually via consumption. A small number of these diseases come from domesticated animals, but the vast majority are attributed to wild ones. Some of the most devastating diseases of all time for humanity started out as infected bushmeat being eaten somewhere by somebody. Take HIV, for example. That is believed to have originated from viruses that affect the immune system of primates, and it's thought to be passed on to humans via the butchering and eating of chimpanzees. That's bushmeat. Ebola, bushmeat. COVID-19, also believed to be bushmeat from bats in a Chinese market, although that theory is contested. Monkeypox, first name bush, last name meat. There is a growing demand for bushmeat among diaspora communities in Europe and North America. As a result, the illegal bushmeat trade has become a global industry and an emerging threat to a human race that's more interconnected than ever. Researchers estimate that over 5 tons of wild animal meat is smuggled into Europe weekly through Paris-Roissy-Charles de Gaulle Airport in France alone. Meaning back in 2002, the BBC estimated that the amount of bushmeat arriving at Heathrow Airport was up to 10 tons a day. And such illegal imported bushmeat can also contain other dangerous pathogens like foot and mouth, anthrax, tuberculosis, or cholera. It's hard to decipher the true number of deaths that can be directly attributed to bushmeat consumption. It's often eaten in remote areas with poor disease surveillance and lackluster medical facilities. Meanwhile, some deaths are misattributed to other causes, leaving the whole situation of bushmeat deaths vastly underreported. But working from the zoonotic diseases we know of, monkeypox has killed 72 people since 2022, Ebola has killed 15,000 people since 1976, COVID killed around 7 million people, and HIV and AIDS has led to over 40 million deaths since the 1980s. So, not all bushmeat is going to give you diseases and kill you, but it's a much higher likelihood than just eating regularly cultivated livestock with all of their boring safety standards. Nobody wants to be patient zero for the latest pandemic that threatens to wipe us off the face of the earth. But Simon, you might be thinking, I'm not going to come across bushmeat in my day-to-day life. I don't live in Africa or any of the places where bushmeat is typically found. I mean, tell me something deadly that I can find in my kitchen at home. Well, alright then. Number 8. Green potatoes, the poison in your kitchen. Ah, the humble potato. The spud, a staple of diets the world over and enjoyed in so many variations that entire cookbooks are dedicated just to the preparation of them. Have you ever had an old potato that's been in your cupboard or on your countertop for a while and it starts to turn green? And if you eat it, it tastes somewhat bitter? Well, it's not exact. Don't tell me it's cyanide again. It's cyanide, isn't it? The bitter taste of cyanide. Well, it's not an exact science, but potatoes like that can actually send you 6 feet under if you're not careful, because that green color might indicate the presence of a deadly toxin. Potatoes go green as a natural process that happens when they're exposed to sunlight, as it causes them to produce chlorophyll, that green pigment that gives plants their green color. In lighter-skinned potatoes, you can see this process a little more easily, but in darker-skinned potatoes, this process is somewhat hidden. And that chlorophyll is entirely harmless. You eat foods that contain it every single day, or at least you should be for eating a balanced diet. But the green tinge on an otherwise normal potato could indicate the production of a toxic compound known as solanine. Oh, it's nice that it's not cyanide. That's a plus. Bit of a change. When exposure to light causes potatoes to produce chlorophyll, or when they're damaged, it can encourage the production of certain compounds that protect against damage from insects, bacteria, or fungi. This is natural for potatoes, and the compounds they make are called glycoalkaloids, and solanine is one of these. Generally speaking, the greener a potato, the more solanine there is in it, but that's not a hard and fast rule, because despite sunlight causing the production of both solanine and chlorophyll, they both happen independently of one another. These days, potatoes are screened for solanine levels before they end up in your kitchen, and for the most part, trimming away any part of the potato that's green should make it safe to eat. But if in doubt, throw it away. You see, solanine can be nasty, and you don't want it in your body. It causes potatoes to have a bitter flavor, and it can cause a burning sensation in your mouth or throat. That's a dead ringer for high solanine levels, by the way. Eating large amounts of green potatoes with lots of solanine in them can cause diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, sweating, and headaches. Most people can recover from solanine poisoning without any issues at home. It's not unlike food poisoning. But in large enough doses, it can be fatal. And whilst incredibly rare, because you'd need to eat a lot of them for the solanine to have a fatal effect, there are documented cases of people dying from eating potatoes, usually in times of food shortages. For example, in North Korea during the war years of 1952 to 1953, entire communities were forced to eat old, green, or rotting potatoes. In one area alone, 382 people were affected, of whom 52 were hospitalized and 22 died, with the most severe cases dying of heart failure within 24 hours of consumption from green potatoes. Goddamn. It goes to show, foods that come out of the dirt can send you beneath it if you ignore the warning signs. And I mean, that's one deadly starchy food, but how about another, number 7, mochi, when chewy becomes deadly? This Japanese delicacy appears like a harmless treat, but it's actually deceptively dangerous, with thousands of people dying every year as a result of its sweet allure. Known as mochi, it's made from glutinous rice that is cooked until soft, then relentlessly mashed and pounded until it forms a sticky mass, which is then shaped into balls. It's sweet, commonly filled with a red bean paste known as anko or even ice cream. Sounds innocent enough, doesn't it? Well, where it becomes dangerous is in the sheer amount of chewing that it takes to eat it. Unless chewed very thoroughly, it is particularly difficult to swallow. Gastroenterologist Dr. Amir Masood, when commenting on the topic, noted that from the perspective of the coordination needed from the mouth, jaw, and throat, it is one of the hardest things to swallow. This means it's especially hazardous to anybody who struggles to chew properly, like young children or the elderly. And of course, Japan has an aging population, where people live longer than most other places on Earth, and Japan is also fiercely traditional. Mochi just so happens to be one of the things much of the country consumes annually for Japanese New Year. According to Japanese media, 90% of those rushed to hospital from choking on their New Year's dish are people aged 65 or older. During the 2014 to 2015 New Year period in the land of the rising sun, 9 people choked to death on mochi in Tokyo alone. 3 of those were from 18 cases that specifically were taken to hospital on New Year itself. Japanese officials have since started to advise the general public that people cut their mochi into smaller pieces, to eat it with great care, and to always ensure that someone else is there just in case. Because the reality is, the majority of these deaths are very much preventable. And there are, unfortunately, an awful lot of them every year. According to the Fuji News Network, an estimated 3,500 people die in Japan every single year by choking on mochi. Guys! Chew your food, good lord. By comparison, in 2023, 2,678 people died in Japan of traffic accidents. Yes, in Japan, choking on a sweet treat is more common than dying in a car crash. What is happening? When compared to ultra-dangerous Fugu we mentioned earlier, where there are barely any deaths every year, perhaps the Japanese government needs to start treating mochi deaths a lot more seriously, because, and forgive the pun here, as far as deaths by food goes, those numbers, they're pretty hard to swallow. You're welcome. Number 6, tuna, the pregnancy killer. Tuna is delicious most of the time. It's called the chicken of the sea for a reason, but there's one scenario where tuna should be avoided altogether, and that's pregnancy. And believe it or not, if you are pregnant, tuna is potentially deadly for you in a whole number of ways. To begin with, raw tuna is dangerous to pregnant women because of the chance of listeria infection, which can be quite distressing when pregnant. Symptoms include a high temperature, aches and pains, chills, vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, and the baby in utero moving less than normal. Most people get over it, but in pregnant women, it can increase the chances of a miscarriage or stillbirth. And after the baby is born, it could get sepsis or meningitis. Alright, so what about cooked tuna? That must be fine, yeah? No, wrong. 2 words for you. Mercury poisoning. Now, all fish contain small traces of mercury to some degree that is otherwise totally harmless to us humans. It's why you can enjoy fish and chips on the beach without keeling over. And even in eating fish and chips on the beach with sand, who does that? That's weird. Then even in canned tuna, mercury is pretty light overall, but larger, older tuna like Big Eye, for example, should be avoided entirely as they will have accumulated much more mercury in their bodies over time. The threat of mercury to the fetus is oh so real. Exposure to high levels of mercury in utero is linked to sensory impairments and seizures in children, but in severe enough cases, neonatal death has even occurred. It's no joke, don't eat tuna if you're pregnant. Otherwise, you can eat tuna. It's pretty good. It's good for you as well, unless you're pregnant. Don't eat tuna if you're pregnant. Did I make that clear? Okay, so just go for smaller tuna from a fishmonger, for example. Right, that must be totally safe. Oh, well, even that can still pose a risk, and not just to pregnant women, but to people in general. Improper storage of tuna after it's caught, say if it's not refrigerated properly, for example, is linked with scromboid poisoning. Okay. This is caused by a chemical reaction within the tuna because it naturally contains high levels of the amino acid histidine. But when stored above 16 degrees Celsius, that's 60 degrees Fahrenheit, bacteria convert histidine into histamine. You might have heard of histamine. It's the chemical compound in your body that responds to allergic reactions. And cooking it won't work, neither will freezing or smoking it, as histamine is heat stable, so it can't be destroyed through changes in temperature. Eating histamine-rich tuna can trigger symptoms that mimic an allergic reaction, even if there is no allergy present whatsoever. The person gets all the trademark signs: rash, nausea, inflammation of the airways in extreme cases. Most cases of scromboid poisoning clear up within a day or two, but there has been one documented fatality that came after consuming tuna. If you're pregnant, it's probably best avoided altogether, and if you're not, just be careful with those unscrupulous fishmongers. They're slippery characters. High fructose corn syrup. Heart attack central. This one, not really a food per se, more of an ingredient and food-based product, that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the staggering effects that high fructose corn syrup can have on a person's health. Most starchy carbs like rice, for example, get broken down into glucose, which is the most basic form of sugar. But more complex forms of sugar, like table sugar and high fructose corn syrup, are composed of around half glucose and half fructose. The more complex molecule of sugar are often found in things like fruits and vegetables. Glucose is easily transported and used by every cell in your body, but by contrast, fructose from corn syrup needs to be broken down into glucose, glycogen, also known as stored carbs or fat by the liver, before it can be used as fuel to give you the energy that you need. It makes it harder for your body to use up, and that's because it's not naturally used to fructose in such high amounts. Fructose levels in things like fruits and veg have a very low amount of natural fructose, and that can't really do you any harm. This is why, even though there's sugar in them, they're still good for you. But high fructose corn syrup, specifically in the United States, has become far more widely available, affordable, and commercially viable. You or your parents might remember when everything switched to high fructose corn syrup in the 70s and 80s. Definitely your parents, judging by the demographics of this channel, resulting in the high amount of high fructose corn syrup in the average American diet. But how does it kill you? Well, for starters, it's often empty calories and provides very little or no essential nutrients whatsoever. It's present as an additive in many ultra-processed foods and drinks throughout the USA, which contribute to things like weight gain. Since the advent of high fructose corn syrup in the United States, the average daily calorie intake for sugar has increased by 300% on what it was just 50 years ago. This has led to a higher daily caloric intake in general for most Americans. This increases the risk of obesity and weight gain, which in turn have all kinds of adverse effects on one's health. It increases the risk of fatty liver disease as well as type 2 diabetes, which is one of the leading causes of death globally. Increased weight gain also contributes to higher rates of cancers and heart disease, which are also global leading causes of kicking the bucket. It can also be linked to inflammatory diseases like gout and even things like stroke too, as visceral fat surrounds people's organs and gets into the bloodstream. Now, Is this solely the fault of high fructose corn syrup? No, of course not. It's just one of the many contributing factors of poor diets and obesity issues in the United States. But to say it's having no effect in terms of comorbidities would be pretty damn naive. So, high fructose corn syrup won't kill you in the same way that a poison might, but you can consider it something of an accelerant for ill health in general. It's sort of like strapping a supercharger to the already existing mortality factors. Corn syrup will kill you, but measured in decades as opposed to the much shorter time frame of our next entry. Fesikh, the Pharaoh's curse. Now, there aren't many foods on this list that we can definitively say are old enough to have been eaten by pharaohs, but this one absolutely is. Fesikh is an Egyptian dish that is traditionally eaten during Sham al-Nasim, a spring national holiday. Traditionally, Fesikh is made from the fish grey mullet. It's fermented, salted, dried, and then served alongside brown bread, oil, lemon, and onion. Sounds pretty tasty, and it dates back thousands of years to when Egypt itself was building pyramids, burying their dead in sarcophaguses, and were generally the envy of the world. But do not be fooled by a relatively innocent description. This dish is known for two things: how bad it smells and how bad it can kill you. It's reported to smell foul, with a distinct odor that lingers inside your home for days after it's consumed, and it causes death just as much as it smells like it. Fesikh has even earned itself a very appetizing nickname of the deadly fish, owing to its association with severe food poisoning. When not properly fermented or otherwise stored, Fesikh can develop the bacteria known as Clostridium botulinum, which causes botulism, a potentially fatal disease that attacks the central nervous system. One day, you're there eating some stinky fish, and the next you find yourself experiencing symptoms like nausea, vomiting, double vision, blurred vision, dropping eyelids, dry mouth, difficulty speaking, difficulty swallowing, weakness, respiratory failure, paralysis, and your untimely demise. Oh my god, deep breath. Every year, Egyptian health vendors have to trawl the streets, diligently inspecting vendors during the festival in order to stop people getting seriously ill. Yup! Egypt has stinky fish police. The worst year on record, according to the Egyptian Ministry of Health, was 1991, when a staggering 18 people lost their lives to improperly stored Fesikh. But botulism outbreaks from Fesikh have broken containment, occurring in Egyptian diasporas all over the world. Foodborne botulism outbreaks associated with Fesikh have occurred across North America, including 2 outbreaks among persons of Egyptian descent in 1992 and 2005, both in New Jersey. Meanwhile, Canada had its own outbreak in May 2012, where it had to issue a public health warning pertaining to Fesikh. Remember, food contaminated with the botulinum toxin may not look or smell spoiled, but being brutally honest, even if it did 100% of the time, you still wouldn't be able to tell in this case. But it's not quite as rough as the toxin from our next seemingly ordinary plant. Number 3, castor beans, seeds of destruction. Now, there are beans, or rather seeds, that you can't eat because they're so toxic, yet the plant they come from is used to make important products that people use every day. This is the castor oil plant, used to make, you guessed it, castor oil. What? I know, these are the hard-hitting facts that you come here for. Although native to East Africa, the plant is found in tropical and subtropical areas around the world, including the United States, and it has a wide variety of uses for industrial purposes, and it grows wild on every continent except Antarctica. Although castor oil is primarily known for its laxative properties, it has been reported to have additional benefits, such as helping you pee, metabolizing fats, and aiding antimicrobial activity. But despite all these supposed benefits, the castor oil plant holds a fatal harbinger of doom: its seeds. Known as castor beans, the castor oil seeds appear in these bright red spiky pods on the plant. And if that looks like a warning, it's because it is a warning. Inside the seeds, with a giraffe-like pattern of darker patches on a light base that is chock full of a toxic compound known as ricin. At 6,000 times deadlier than cyanide and 12,000 times deadlier than rattlesnake venom, it is considered one of the most toxic, naturally occurring poisons on Earth. It is so deadly that it has been used as a weapon of biological warfare to assassinate people. So, it can certainly kill you. It's also odorless and tasteless, so it can be pretty hard to detect, especially post-mortem, unless screening for castor bean DNA. But castor oil is otherwise safe. The cooking and refining process thankfully removes all the ricin as the seeds are cooked, dried, and pressed. But the raw beans themselves are considered especially dangerous. It has been theorized that chewing and swallowing a single seed could be enough to kill a child with a minimum lethal dose of a single milligram. The reason ricin is so deadly is that it affects individual cells at the microscopic level. Ricin can disrupt the ability of cells to make the proteins they need to function, Without those proteins, our cells die, and when enough cells in certain organs die, those organs fail, leading swiftly to death. But not before a whole host of very painful symptoms. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain are expected, and when ingested, the cells that line the digestive tract can begin to shed, resulting in internal bleeding followed by electrolyte loss, shock, and as mentioned, multi-organ failure. Symptoms are usually felt within 4 to 12 hours after exposure, depending on how much is ingested, but the second something starts to feel seriously wrong, it is far too late. Ricin has no antidote, so all measures to treat it are purely supportive. It's you versus the ricin. And, well, I'd put my money on the ricin. Number 2, medium rare chicken. Murder most foul. Have you ever been... You come here for the puns, don't you? Have you ever been at a friend's barbecue and become violently ill the next day? As you sit there on the toilet regretting your life decisions, you realize that you shouldn't have trusted the chicken that looked just a little too pink in the middle. You, my friends, might be suffering from a rough case of salmonella. Salmonella, contrary to popular belief, doesn't exclusively come from raw or undercooked chicken. That's just where it's most known to come from. It's a rod-shaped bacteria that makes you sick, mainly coming from uncooked, unclean foods. It can arise from other meats and seafood. It's been known to be present also in raw or undercooked egg and dairy products, uncooked fruits and vegetables, and even contaminated water if you're really unlucky. Salmonella is astonishingly common to the point where it feels like we're going to need to start teaching people how to cook properly and wash their hands again. In the United States alone, there are 1.35 million cases of salmonella every year, according to the CDC. Of those 1.35 million cases, around 25,000 people are hospitalized as a result of it every year, and believe it or not, over 400 people die annually as a result of some bad chicken. It mostly stays in your GI tract, giving you gastroenteritis, or its common name, food poisoning. This causes people to experience nausea, dehydration, bloody diarrhea, fever, vomiting, headaches, and chills. And for most people, as unpleasant as this is as bad as it gets, and it'll pass through your system within a week, and then you forget you even had it by the following month. Drink lots of fluids, eat mild bland foods, and just rest, you'll be fine. But for a very unfortunate select few who are either extraordinarily unlucky or otherwise vulnerable, it can get oh so much worse. A specific salmonella strain of bacteria can actually cause typhoid, which is a very severe illness that can be life-threatening. There are also antibiotic-resistant strains that account for tens of thousands of infections every year, which are more complicated to treat. Sometimes, in very remote cases, salmonella bacteria can leave the GI tract and enter another part of the body, causing a serious, life-threatening infection. Bacteremia, for example, occurs when salmonella or any other bacteria enters the bloodstream, which can lead to septic shock and organ failure, followed swiftly by your funeral. But it can also turn itself into meningitis or endocarditis, among other more serious illnesses. And nobody wants "killed by chicken" on their headstone. So next time, just say no to that medium rare poultry. And say no to our final food at any cost. Number 1 is brains. Now, humans have been eating brains for about as long as we've been eating anything else. Across the world today, there are various cultures and traditions that choose to eat certain animal brains, from the Indian goat brain-based dish bagaz to the pig brain delicacy enjoyed in the Chinese province of Sichuan, to the almost certain myth of live monkey brains being eaten throughout Southeast Asia as a result of the classic 1978 film Faces of Death. Now, if prepared correctly and from an entirely healthy animal, there is, in theory, nothing wrong with consuming a brain, outside of it being really creepy, weird, and slightly zombie-like, of course. But if the animal you're eating died of a disease, in particular a prion disease, you are in big trouble. You see, prions are misfolded proteins that induce misfolding in other perfectly normal variants of the same protein, leading to cell death. Cell death in the brain is a nasty thing to have happen to a person, especially as the result of a meal. These prions are responsible for prion diseases, with one example being Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD, which is linked to the consumption of bovine brain that have contracted something like mad cow disease. As the prions do irreversible damage to nerve cells within a brain or cervical spine, several symptoms will occur. A person might experience a loss of intellect or memory. They could experience a change in personality, a loss of balance or coordination, slurred speech, vision problems resulting in blindness, abnormal jerking movements, and the progressive loss of brain function and mobility. Eventually, this leads to brain damage severe enough that the brain cannot regulate the functions of the rest of the body, and death follows. In all cases, prion diseases are considered rapidly degenerative and invariably fatal for whoever is unfortunate enough to contract one. The only treatment options are making the person affected comfortable, whilst their demise waits for them on the horizon. Other prion diseases include chronic wasting disease, which comes from the consumption of elk brains, or kuru, which has been recorded among cannibals in Papua New Guinea after eating a fellow human's brain. There is no discernible way to tell if a brain you're about to consume is infected by a prion disease. And whilst they're pretty rare, would you want to take that risk knowing that if you just put the fork down, you would have saved yourself an agonizingly miserable death? As far as deadly foods go, not only are brains some of the most viscerally repulsive, but there is a perverse sense of irony knowing that someone's own brain caused its ultimate demise through its own decision-making processes to eat said brains in the first place. Thank you for watching.